Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this week's installment of this week's installment of Tuesday Open Coaching. Forgetting what setting I'm in today, but I'm Brian Doyle. For those of you that don't know me, and each Tuesday we do coaching at 3 p.m. Eastern, noontime Pacific, and we do a deep dive on one of the different topics or services within the platform itself. If I'm if you've never attended before, we finish the session with an Ask Me Anything. There, we're happy to open up the floor for any questions that anyone might have. Right now, I'm in the process of opening up Q&A. So if you do have some questions as we go through things today, please feel free to go through our Q&A section or put any comments into Q&A. And I am now opening up chat as well. So if you want to put something in the chat, we can absolutely, grab those as we go interactively. But today's session is really focused on some IT review tips and tricks that you may or may not know about, and kind of going into a deep dive on the entire process. So, in starting that out today, one of the things that we want to look at is kind of template selection and management, and how you can manage those templates you're going to use in your business review. And also, while we're in templates, we're going to talk about some of the newer scoring models that many folks may or may not be aware of are available to them within VCIO Toolbox. So as we come over into the template library, I think the majority of you that I'm seeing in the session today are VCIO Toolbox users. But if you're not a VCIO Toolbox user, we basically segment all of our different templates by meeting types. So meeting types, especially the ones classified as business review, are the ones that most customers use in standard QBRs. All of our templates are stackable. And what this really means to you is you can customize what is going to be reviewed and what content is going to be delivered to a customer through the templates you assign to a client, either at activation or if you make changes later within the template library. It's not a one-size-fits-all process, but what we are trying to build are global templates that you can manage very easily for your entire, scope of your client portfolio. And then we are able to do customizations within those templates so we can right-size those assessments to support other users. So you notice these templates are stackable in format. You'll see things like workstations, servers, network and infrastructure, and so forth. And you can assemble those based on what your client need is. Additionally, we've got the ability to build our business insight templates here as well. And those are all checked off as business insight templates when you set up your template. And those also carry the meeting type business review. And if you're not aware of this, you can use VCIO Toolbox for other use cases as well. We have 3 built into the system. We have a cloud readiness assessment, which is a template that you can leverage for when you're doing kind of a cloud readiness pre-check for a customer that might be going to AWS or Azure. Really, it's a document that'll help you determine whether the I's are dotted and T's are crossed across your client base. We have our pre-sales assessment, just a simple 30-question assessment if you wanted to do a mini assessment for a customer as part of the pre-sales process. So you can both bring them a little bit of value during that process, but more importantly, show them how they're going to be reported to should they be working with you. You can definitely leverage that template to do so. And then the final one is our tech stack review. Here, we really suggest that you customize that template to meet your personal tech stack requirements, whatever the pillars of your tech stack might be. And then you can assess your customers for internal use, identifying who's compliant and not compliant against your different tech stack elements and what the value of those upgrades might be. And those will feed the CAM dashboard where you can really view white space and see what each customer's white space score is, what their gap score is, where they're compliant and not compliant, and those values for each project. Across the entire portfolio, you're able to look at each pillar that of your tech stack and see which areas you might have the greatest gains. And, I see folks using that for marketing discussions as well. So, those are some of the things about kind of the template, the meeting type framework. What I want to dive into is a few things within the templates that you may not be aware of, features that we've built into these to help support you as you're building out your process. And actually, I want to go to a specific template that I know I've got this information in. backup and disaster recovery, and we come in here. So for those of you that have never done any template customization, it's really easy within the GUI. We have the ability to drag and drop any of the preset elements here. So if you want to reorder these items so they present out in reports and scorecards a little bit differently, you can certainly do that. If you want to add topics to a template, it's very easy. Just click add and you can add the name of that topic in there. Over on the right-hand side, we have the various questions that are being asked within each topic. Now, if you're using the pre-built VCIO toolbox templates, you can come in here and make customizations if you choose. You can change the question and answer key. You can use either a text field, a yes, no, which also includes a not applicable option, or you can create a multiple choice list of records at which you get a new selection listed here and you can just comma separate those values. You have the ability to change the weight of the question. All of our weighted values are on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the most severe. And this gives you the ability to align weight. So if you think we missed the mark, hey, you don't think backup documentation is just a middle of the road need, it's a high need, you can change that to 5. And as you know, weighted values in the standard BPVR scorecard that VCIO comes set with really helps with kind of aligning the depth of the penalty based on what's being measured. Maturity level, and we'll be seeing more about these both visually in a few moments, but maturity level is where the question sits amongst a series of maturity levels. You have 5 to work with. As of today, we have 3 different maturity levels within the system that we're utilizing with our QBRs on our standard templates. Some of you that have been with us for a while may see 4 different levels there, but you can expand up to 5. And really what this does is it puts these questions in the different maturity levels so you can right size the assessment based on the complexity of a customer. The level 1 questions are high risk, high impact, and we saw drove the most recommendations into client roadmaps. So those questions were deemed level 1. We then looked at the remaining questions, and granted, this is where it gets a little subjective. My team sat down and we looked at the remaining questions and we said, if they're questions that support what most customers put into their MSP contracts as obligations, we'll put those in level 2 if they weren't covered in level 1. And that's really where we get our contract compliance layer. Level 3 in our systems for your more sophisticated clients with deeper technologies, multi-technology concerns. In a few minutes, you'll see how those progress, but this really allows you to right-size the assessment. Now, there are also some additional elements here in the templates that you can take advantage of. I'm sure most of you have seen that in your reviews. You've got a number of suggested recommendations available to you. Well, this is where they get cataloged. You'll see that we've got our list of recommendation choices. We usually have at least 1, sometimes 2, depending on the question. You'll see down here, we've actually built up to 4 different ones. So if you want to build different sizes, you can build different sizes as well. And this really allows you to expand this catalog as you see fit and make sure you've got the right options for your team. Now, you'll see in a few moments, these are not the only options. These are kind of recommended options, but if you need something different, you're not bound by them. You can absolutely build something on the fly. If you have an external link related to this question, maybe you guys wrote a blog article or you have a standard operating procedure that you share with your customers that is in a web format, you can link very easily to those assets and articles. Now, in most cases, this is not something you'll do at the global level, but it's capable. Its capability exists for you. Most links are tied at the individual controls inside the IT review for a customer. But if you did have something like why backup's important and you want to include that as part of your reporting, this is absolutely where you can add that link as well. One that I think most customers have not yet leveraged to its fullest is our new how-to and help information catalog. You'll see here that we've got different help articles we can build, and this is really geared for your engineers to serve as kind of a how-to. Now, it'll take you a little bit of time to build out your catalog if you want to do this, but one of our goals at VCIO Toolbox is that you're putting the assessment in the hands of some of your lower cost or underutilized resources whenever possible. And to do that and do that effectively, they do need to have some guidance or some instruction on where to find this information. So you'll see very simply, actually, I'm going to go into the one in our list so you can see it with data. You have the ability to create these how-tos very easy within your review. Now you've got a few options on how you can build these how-tos within your template. You can absolutely build, a how-to instruction right over here. You can put in your directions. You've got the ability to number items, bullet items, bold items, and really give a step-by-step in that process. Now, if you're an IT Glue user, you have a SharePoint that catalogs your standard operating procedures, you may have already built how-tos that help your end users get to this data. If that's the case, you can put in a link to where that data is housed. That could be an IT Glue link, a SharePoint link, whatever the case may be. And then you can name what that link's going to say as text. And then the final thing you can do is build videos in here as well. So once you put these together, these, in a few moments, you'll see when we go in the IT review, these can become very easy to reach guidance to help people build out this review and really help your team move through the process quicker in a much more standardized fashion. So, question that often comes up, why doesn't the CIO Toolbox build these for us? The simple reason is you guys all use different tools. So how one person's going to arrive at finding assets or finding backup directions is going to be different depending on the softwares they use. So this is really an area that while we can give you the ability to put them into your reviews, it's very difficult for us to kind of standardize on what the steps might be in your environment. That said, we do have some designs for our Google Workspace and Microsoft 365 and Azure templates to get that standard instruction built into the templates for you, as that will be consistent through every customer that's using Microsoft 365 as an example. There's not that customization capability like you have with your different tools. So this is where you can build some of this supporting data as well. And again, that's all part of your standard template questions, very easy to build out if you want to spend some time customizing it. Now, before we go into the IT review, I did mention that we now have different scoring methodologies available to you. So if you go to any of your templates and you click on the edit pencil, you will see that we have new scoring methods available to you for use within the QBR area. The standard BPVR is what you likely all have in place today. That is your best practice, vulnerability, and risk rating template. So you have those three options that you either turn red or green, and that is what generates your final score. Now, some feedback we received as an organization was, hey, sometimes when we're doing standard BPVR templates, we're not exactly getting scoring that's representative of exactly where the customer is. And part of the reason for that is it was the first scoring method we had in VCIO Toolbox, and we set it up kind of to act like a credit score or a standardized test score like your SATs, where you get points because the network is operational, right? Obviously, none of these systems are completely down, so there is some, element of health going on within those environments. So it was really created in a way to be a baseline score. So you'll see at certain times, that you might have total negative answers in a section, but it's still not scoring 0. And part of that is because they receive some credit for just being operational. This is why it also skews our red, yellows, and greens a little bit high. Red is 89 and below. Yellow is 90 to 94, and green is 90 and above. Our customers asked us if we could build a more standard scorecard where you have an absolute 0 score that is attainable and, basically would lower kind of the red, green, and yellow values to a place that some customers might feel a little bit more comfortable, like 90 and above is green, 70 to 90 is, or 70 to 89 is yellow, and anything below 70 would be in the red zone. And the way you can do that is you can set up different scoring models. The ones we see people really buying into most are the average best practice model for the QBR side of things. Here you only have one measurement that you would do. You would look at a question and you would say, does it meet our best practices or does it not? If it doesn't meet your best practices, it scores negatively. Then each section gets an average score based on how many questions exist in that score. So if you have 5 questions within that section, if one's wrong, it'll drop by 20 points. And that's, one way we see people utilizing this. This gives you a little bit more representative of a score where you might show every section is green, but you've got one section that's a total 0. And you're really able to point out that that's an area of deficit for your customer. Now, if you want to do this as a risk-based process and you'd rather rate instead of best practice risk and have that as your only drop-down score, you can absolutely do that with average risk. When you see average all points best practice and risk there, again, focusing on the best practice one, this will take all the total available points based on your weighted values. So now it looks at those weighted values and says every one of those increments is a point. So if I have a question that is a high severity, it would be worth 5 points if I check that one negatively. So this one would then look at the average points across the board and say, okay, we have the ability to potentially score 650 points during this assessment. It will then translate that into a percentage of point taken off for each deduction and basically create your score on a scale of 100 that way. It's a little bit more complex. It's something that a couple particular customers had requested, so we built it into the system. But I've seen more and more of our customers that want to get a little bit deeper on that red, green, and yellow, kind of have the red be a little bit further down the line, moving to the average best practice. Couple caveats of note there. If you're already using standard BPVR, that will absolutely translate. If you change that to average best practice, it'll inherit any of the best practice misses and then become your standard templates. The other thing is you can't have a mixed template mix. If you're going to go, average best practice with your quarterly business review templates, you have to make them all average best practice. If even one of them's missing, it will revert back to the standard BPVR just to make sure that there is a scoring method in place for that customer. So I encourage you maybe, use one of your lesser used meeting types, build a new template, maybe use like monthly metric, give it a new scoring method, and then, put some questions in and you can play with that a little bit. If you have any questions and you want to do a little one-on-one, if you're an existing customer to really go see how that's going to impact you, please feel free to schedule a meeting with me. This is something that I know is one of the more major changes that we're doing, and I don't want people entering into it lightly if they need some support. That's what we're here for. So ping me, ping support at VCIO Toolbox. We'll help you in making those moves and give you some best practices. If you're happy with standard best practice, vulnerability and risk, by all means, continue on with that. It's still the default in our system because we still believe strongly in that scoring methodology. But, certainly we want to make sure that we had options for others. So guys, we just spent, quite a bit of time on template selection and management, but it's a very critical process within here. These templates are meant to be very flexible. They're meant to be very easy to use. And those scoring updates certainly give you more options if you want a different type of scoring method for your customer. Now, now we can look a little bit at kind of the IT review itself and how we use these and put them into practice. So your template library is found here under the More button. And you'll notice here, I just have a couple templates. I'm actually going to add a couple more business review templates just for the demonstration purposes. And you'll see now that I've got those templates in place. Now, I usually suggest in your first setup here, make sure you put them in whatever order you want them to present themselves. But I want to bring your attention to the green tags. These green tags are the meeting type of that template. So now when I go into my calendar and I go to set up my meeting, I will choose the meeting type and I will only be presented with the templates associated with that meeting type. So if I'm doing a tech stack review, it's going to ignore the 2 business review templates I just added and just bring in the tech stack review for use. Why this is very important is this also tells the system how to group data for long-term use. As most of you know, the worst is the first. You got to build a baseline assessment for your customer. But as you move forward in the process, you can close that template. And by choosing the meeting type and template type, It then tells the system how to group that data for long-term use. So when you go to meeting number 2 and beyond with that customer, you're presented with the data from the previous meeting. You can modify and make changes to that based on current status, and you will not disrupt the history from the previous meeting, but you will save 60%, 70% of your prep time, because now you're just modifying the results you put in that initial assessment, and that's really going to help you along as well. So we do have a reference table under admin settings where you can build out your own meeting types. When you build out those meeting types, you can build out your own templates. Really, we can support anything that's checklist based in here, and you can create a meeting type to support that. So you can separate scoring and you can keep track of those assessments. Now, when you come into the IT review, this is where you now control what meeting is going to be put into use. So I actually don't have a tech stack meeting right now. I came over here, and I'm just going to call this TS meeting. I can create a tech stack meeting, pull my tech stack review template in, and now when I go into my IT review, that template is also available for me to select from. And you will see here when I do that selection, it brings me to that different assessment. In this case, I have my tech stack review. If I move back to business review, I'm now seeing all my different templates and that I associated for the business review here, and I can do this assessment. That said, though, it's always building recommendations to a unified roadmap for the customer. One single roadmap supports any type of meeting in QBR, and it also supports any assessments you do in the GRC, and we'll get a little deeper into that in a moment. But now that we're in this IT review section and we've set our business review, a couple things you'll notice. Each one of these sections is representative of one of those templates that you chose. So here I've got my Office 365 and my telecommunications template. You'll notice that I have a number of items grayed out in my telecommunications template, and that is simply because those questions are not part of level 1, the maturity level. So step 1 in customizing is picking my template types that are associated with the customer. Step 2 is choosing a maturity level. You'll see here that I have 37 questions in maturity level 1 for this customer. If I move to maturity level 2, that expands out to 65 questions. If I go to maturity level 3, it expands out to 73 questions. Each one of these maturity levels can build upon each other. So if your customer grows over time, you can raise them up in your maturity scheme. Level 1 rolls into 2, 2 rolls into 3, and so forth. And that really just helps you right-size the complexity of the assessment based on the customer you're going to be serving. That will stay persistent as well. If you close this meeting and it was a level 2, next time you generate a business review for your customer, it will open up at level 2 as well. Over here, we've got the questions and answer sets. Obviously, answering the questions you guys are probably pretty comfortable with. You supply it with an answer. Scoring is based off of best practice vulnerability and risk ratings. If you want to reset them all back to green, you can do so easily. And if you want to change them all negative, you can do that very easily as well with these shortcut buttons. Over here, you'll notice an internal confidence level. This is more a gauge for you and your team to utilize if one of your engineers isn't really sure if they got the right facts here. They can put a low confidence level on a question, and that'll really just help the VCIO know, hey, is this an absolute, or do we maybe got to do a little bit more digging? Really, how you use that is totally up to you, but it is available to you here within the system. Now, as you go through your questions, you've got some controls you can leverage as well, besides scoring. Over here on the right-hand side, you'll notice you've got this hide button. If you've got a question that's not relevant to this customer's experience, you can even take one further step in customization and hide that question. When you hide that question, it grays out. It's no longer part of the scoring. We actually reduced our question number by 1 here, and it's no longer visible to your customer. But you're still going to see it as a hidden question. You can isolate just on hidden questions and expand those out, because there might be a time where you want to bring this question back in the review. Their condition changes. Now this question's valued, and we can bring that back. Next to the hide button, you're just seeing the weighted value for the question and what maturity level this question is native to. So even though I'm in a maturity 3 review here, I now know that this question is part of the maturity level 2 with our customers. Now, some other tools that are important for you in the IT review are engineer and CIO notes. These are customer-facing boxes. You don't want ticket speak here. You don't want shorthand. But you also don't want to have to fill them in every single time with the same response that could be utilized across customers. So we've set up our review in such a way that answers can be reutilized and repurposed. It basically dynamically learns these responses. So we take that worst as a first concept and really make it the worst as the first 2 or 3. As we're building out this review, we're getting this data into the system and we're basically seeding our multiple choice key. So here in this question, are there policies to support accounts and authentication? Let's assume it's negative. And I say, no, there are currently no policies active for the client. So now I've put this sentence in. That's really going to be my answer for this customer. I can make sure it's grammatically correct, and I can click save. Once I do that, and I'm going to refresh to force this issue, but it'll happen on a timed basis, I now come in here, and now attached to this template is that response. So if this becomes now template bound, not client bound. So if I work on a different review for a different customer, these previous entries will build a catalog of responses I could potentially use repeatedly, especially when just a standard answer is required. And then, I can check, see if I have one here I like. If I do, I can simply click on it and add it to that box. If I don't like it, I can build another one. We store up to 10 different responses and we filter out most duplicates. So, this really helps you build a dynamic library. Part of the reason it's dynamic is so you can brand your company and you can brand your different products. Over on the right-hand side, you're going to put in your CIO review. And here we can build some standard answers that can be used anywhere in the assessment. So another recent feature in our system was the addition of predefined responses, which is found under admin settings. Here you can build different common responses that can be used anywhere in an IT review. We've got some sample statements here, but you're not bound by them, but I do use a couple regularly. This does not meet best practices, and this meets best practices. You'll notice you can also use this tag here that's noted above. So if I want to say this does not meet my company's best practices, I would just insert that tag, put it in there, and now when I go back to that review, for that customer, when I go into this now, I have those as previous entries available to me here, and I've built my standard catalog. So this is how we really continue to seed the system, try to automate some of the response gathering that we require, and make sure that we are understanding, or that we're presenting things in the most complete fashion to our customers. Now, if your question's negative, we have a lot of action steps here. And most of you, again, as VCIO Toolbox users, you're already probably comfortable with creating tickets and creating recommendations. What I'm going to share with you some of the tips and tricks of utilizing these. First one is, anytime you come to a recommendation, I always check my existing catalog of recommendations tied to this customer first. It's very possible one of your associates has already built a firewall project, and you can now attach to that project as an object and add it to your review. So, if I came in here and said, look, let me see if I've got any projects that I want to attach, I can attach that project here. And instead of creating a duplicate project that could potentially get out of sync, I'm leveraging this one project against any control that calls for that. Now, my second step would be looking at the suggested recommendation. If I don't see what I like in add existing, I'll just click on the suggested recommendation and make that live. But if I need something different than the suggested recommendation, I absolutely have the ability to build it on the fly. Now, I connected this particular recommendation for a purpose. You get updates on the recommendation here in the IT review. So as you show these projects to your customer and they get adopted or ultimately completed, these recommendations are going to inherit those characteristics here in the IT review. So now let's fast forward to your second meeting. You're coming into this question. It's rated negatively, so you come in and inspect it, and it says, do we have an asset list? And before you even leave the system to go, did we take the steps to update that? You can come down here to recommendations or tickets, if there's a ticket associated, and see what the current status is. Now, suspend disbelief here and, imagine this was, add in asset list. I now know this is completed because I see that the project's been closed. So now I can automate come in here, make those all green again. I can lose this best practice and simply change it back to this meets best practices. And over here, I can add a note that says there is now an asset list, or check and see if I have one. And now I move on. So I never had to leave the system to confirm whether or not this project was done. It was easy for me to see that visibly, and then I can do that. And I can even disconnect this recommendation from this control if we no longer want to represent it there. Same with tickets. We're going to see an external status here. When this ticket gets closed, you're going to see an external status of close here, and you're going to see some notes update the description. If you see this ticket's closed, that'll help you kind of restore this back to green, and you never had to leave the system to go look for any supporting data in order to do that. So we're going to continue to bring more and more of these automations into the system to reduce, being able to click out. A recent one is we just added Nodeware Vulnerability Scanner as an integration into our system. Now we can bring that vulnerability evidence, some of that vulnerability scoring, reporting, and dashboarding into the platform. And that reduces some of your questions potentially within your IT reviews. So again, this is your common next step when you're doing an IT review. It'll build a recommendation or ticket, but now you're also getting that feedback coming back into the system so you can make your updates from meeting to meeting very easily. Over here, we have reference and evidence links. So I mentioned earlier that we had evidence links that you could attach, or links that you could attach at the global level. This is where you would attach links or documents at the individual customer level. If you have that document in a shared space, I would link to that because it's going to help with version controls as your first step. But if you don't have any place to put it, feel free to upload it here. It will then become part of the reporting process right within our system. And for those of you that are not aware, we do have policies that you can apply to your customer experience as well. This is more often than not used more so on the GRC side of things. But if you do come into our system up in the university, we have 29 downloadable HR and IT policies. These are starter templates that you can then customize as you see fit, and you can put into your policy library, which is located on the left-hand menu where you might see my cursor right now. Once you populate that library, you can then attach to any policy you want to share with your customer and quickly add it into the report. And now they've got their starter policy that they can customize as well. If you already have policies that you've drafted out that you use with your customers, you can upload those into your policy library. And stay tuned. We're going to be bringing even more advancements to the policies in 2024 to really make this a more robust, interactive, and trackable process as well. Final thing I'll share about the IT review section that some people are unaware of is we have this little flagging system here. Really, flagging is just an internal marker for you or your engineer when you want to kind of flag an item because maybe you have to come back to it to get more detail, or you want to flag it for the next person working on it. I see a lot of engineers flag items that they want their VCIO partner to be really aware of, and then they'll come in and add an internal comment here. That comment can serve as the guidance for what's wrong with this question or what they want them to look into. You'll notice it gets timestamped so you know when that note was created. And really, this is just a signifier. So when you look, instead of sending 100 different emails or a very detailed email to your VCIO counterpart, you can send something very simply like, hey, I flagged 6 or 7 items. Check out the comments. They'll tell you what to do. Your coworker can then come in here and just filter on the flagged items. And notice I see exactly which questions have flags associated with them very easily here. If I resolve my issue, I can take this flag off and I can reflag it when I need to share information again. I see engineers using this for first pass. They'll flag all the items that they have to go out and get more detail on, and then they'll answer as many questions as they can on the first pass. And now they've isolated the questions they need to go back to. So flagging is totally an internal process. It's just for those that are, that are creating this assessment, but there's value to it in using it as a signifier or an easy way to kind of filter on things in a sea of a long laundry list of questions. So those are some of the critical path in the IT review that you may or may not be aware of. I did neglect to show one thing here, so let me bring that up right now. We talked earlier about how-to items, and this is my backup documentation where I do have a how-to item. And you will see over here that when I click on this little life preserver icon, it will expand out my how-to instruction for the user. So the life preserver is, what we're throwing you if you need some help. And you'll see here, I can either show backup direction with the directions, visibly. Here's that link that will open up, the document if you have it in standard operating procedures or something like that. Or you can upload a video into it as well. So again, very easy for them to get the guidance, very easy to identify which questions have guidance associated with them, because you'll see that little life preserver icon. And as you roll over it, it says how to detail and instructions. So those are some of the new features that have come into the IT review. Hopefully that gives you some guidance on how to work a little bit faster through the IT review as well, and how to bring evidence and policy into the review. So with that being said, I know we went a little bit longer today, but I certainly want to open the floor for Ask Me Anything. If you do need to drop off, please feel free to. For those of you that are going to stay on, if you do have any questions, pop them into the Q&A, pop them into chat. While you're doing that, I will share that we do these trainings every Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, 12 noon Pacific. Again, we pick different topics each week. As you, if you're unable to attend, I certainly encourage you to come here into the university, where you'll see the catalog of all the different things that we've done previously in the system. We generally get these videos up within 24 to 48 hours of the meeting into VCIO Toolbox. And, it's really, and you'll see as you go through here, a lot of the deeper tools inside of VCIO Toolbox are what we review in these trainings as well, because there are things that we just don't get to in a basic training sometimes, or new features that come in. When they come in, we'll definitely pull out a coaching to go over those. But, really trying to build you a catalog of resources to get the help that you support. Yeah, James, as we said, that's something that'll definitely be coming along. And, the Cyber CNS is geared, hopefully before the end of 2023. If not, it'll be in the January 2024 release, just depending on timing there. But, obviously you say, as you state here, Nodeware, it was our first integration. They've been a very strategic partner of ours, from a personal level, but we're not looking to neglect any of the other scanning tools that are out in the marketplace today. We've got Cyber CNS, Nessus, and Charisma all in roadmap to bring other vulnerability options that the MSP community is traditionally using. So, I'll definitely keep you updated as that, comes to life within the system. NIST 2.0 is going through draft right now. So, obviously everybody's aware that NIST 2.0 is in, has been kind of drafted out into the market, and looks like it'll be kind of going into life before the end of the year. We're just going through building the recommendations associated with each one of those, controls that are outlined in this CSF. And once we get that up, we'll first upload it in draft review. You'll see that noted if you do utilize that template. And then once it becomes fully ratified, we will make any changes that are required there, immediately, and then we will publish the final edition. If you start using the NIST 2.0 draft, that final edition will be that same template. It'll just be updated. So don't feel like, hey, if I see the draft in there, I don't want to start using it because there's going to be a change. We manage the publishing on those questions, so we'll make any changes or updates that come in before final draft. All right. Any other questions, folks, that anybody has concerns about today? All right. Well, with that being said, I do encourage you to get your team members in here and coaching too. If you want to sign any of them up for coaching, or they want to sign themselves up, you can do so right here within the the university. That'll take you to a link that'll bring you into sign up, and you can absolutely get your team involved there too. Otherwise, feel free to check out those videos. If you have a topic that you would like us to cover, please send that directly to me at bdoyle@bciotoolbox.com. We want to make these as supporting the community, not just us dictating what the content's going to be. So certainly if you've got a topic that you want covered, even if we've covered it before, we do updates regularly as new components come in or we learn about new use cases on different tools. We'd love to hear from you. But otherwise, I'll give you guys some time back in your day today. And I want to thank all of you for joining us, and look forward to seeing you all again next Tuesday. Thanks for being part of coaching today.